One of these 10 people picked up something from a windowsill and realized immediately it was a human head. One was led through the woods at knife point by a stranger wearing his best friend's backpack. One was locked in a basement with a drawer full of evidence that the man upstairs was not who he said he was. And one was a 6-year-old boy who kept talking to someone named Agnes. Nobody else could see her. These are not urban legends. These are not movies. These are 10 accounts from 10 real people, and every single one of them changed after what happened. You are about to hear all of them. He was 17. It was a quiet neighborhood, the kind of street where nothing ever happens. He was walking to his girlfriend's house, a route he had taken dozens of times before. It was a little later than usual, but that never bothered him. He didn't have a curfew. He didn't have a reason to worry. Then he heard it, a bush just behind him, shaking. Not from the wind. Something was moving through it. He told himself it was nothing. He kept walking, but he walked a little faster. At the next block, he heard a twig snap. He stopped and turned around. Nothing. Just the long, quiet row of hedges lining the sidewalk. Not a single person in sight. He picked up his pace. Then came the footsteps. Quick, light footsteps. Close. He turned again. Still nothing he could see. He could see his girlfriend's house now. He called her. She picked up instantly. He told her what was happening, how something kept following him in the dark. She was watching from her upstairs window as he came around the driveway and stepped onto her property. She waved at him from behind the glass. Then she asked, very quietly, "Who is that man right behind you?" He turned. A fully grown man was crouched low, walking in near silence, no more than 10 feet away. He ran for the door and pounded on it. The man grabbed him and attempted to restrain him, but let go almost immediately and fled into the dark. The police were called. He spent the night at his girlfriend's house, and the man was never identified. It was a stormy night. The whole family was home, scattered into separate rooms doing their own thing. He was in his bedroom watching TV, comfortable, relaxed, the way a bad storm can make you feel when you're safe inside. Then something slammed into his window. He looked up. There was a figure outside, pressed against the glass. The rain was coming down so hard it blurred everything, but he could make out the shape of a person, and that person was pounding on the window. He cracked it open just slightly. The person outside screamed that they were hurt and needed help. He shut the window and ran to tell his father. Before they could even reach the front door, the knocking started there too. Fists hitting the door. A voice shouting for help. His father reached for the handle. He said, "Wait." At that exact moment, the phone rang. The caller ID showed their next-door neighbor. His father answered, listened for 2 seconds, and his expression changed completely. He said, and his exact words were, "No way." He hung up the phone and said, "Stay away from the door." Then he peeked through the window beside the front stoop. There was a man crouched on the step, holding a large chopping axe. His father shouted through the door that police were on their way. Eventually, the figure outside gave up and disappeared into the storm. The neighbor had seen everything. He'd watched an unstable man rummaging through his shed, pull out the axe, and head toward their house. Police found the man wandering the streets a short time later. The story ran in the local newspaper days after. He was very young enough that this memory has stayed with him his entire life. He was in the living room watching cartoons. The TV was loud, and through it, he thought he could hear his mother calling his name from downstairs. He called back. She didn't answer. She called again. Or something did. He walked to the top of the basement stairs and called down into the dark. Nothing. No one. He turned around to leave and heard it again. His mother's voice, coming from inside the basement. In the pitch black, he turned on the lights and walked halfway down, staring into the space below. His mother was not there. Nothing was there. He ran back upstairs, found his actual mother coming down from the floor above, and broke down crying. He told her something had been calling his name in her voice from the basement. She went down to check. She found nothing. He is still certain of what he heard, and he has never been able to explain it. His grandfather is not the kind of man who rattles easily. He lives on a farm, far from the city, and has spent his life outdoors. Well, what happened on that evening walk changed him. He was taking his small Boston Terrier, Sherry, out along the dirt path that runs beside the woods near his property, the same route he walked every evening at sunset. Another person was coming the other way. They had a large hood pulled up. His grandfather said hello. The stranger walked past without a word, without even glancing up. The dog kept looking back, pulling at the leash, barking. His grandfather turned around to see what the dog was reacting to. The stranger, who should have been long gone down the trail, was standing half hidden behind a tree, watching him. He picked up the pace as fast as his age would allow. He always carried pepper spray in his coat pocket. He reached for it. He was almost home. Then he heard footsteps in the leaves, right behind him. Before he could turn, a gloved hand covered his mouth and nose. He says the dog bit at the man's legs. He says that might have been the only reason the grip loosened at all. He managed to pull the pepper spray free. He says he emptied nearly the entire canister. The man screamed and released him. His grandfather ran, made it back to the house. He was physically unharmed, but he has not walked that trail alone since. He grew up in a neighborhood in California where certain things were understood without being spoken. This was crypt territory. Everyone who lived there knew it. When he was 12, he and his best friend, he calls him Stevie D, were riding their bikes at night and drifted past an abandoned house on their block. The place had been empty for years. Nobody would buy it. Nobody knew exactly why. Stevie pointed at the window. There was a face in it. They moved their bikes closer. The face was there, sitting between the gap in the curtains, staring forward. They watched it for longer than they should have. And then they noticed. It wasn't moving. Not even slightly. They got closer still. It looked like a Halloween prop. A fake head placed in the window. They decided to go in. The back door was already unlocked. They stepped inside without turning on the lights. They didn't want anyone to know they were in there. They made their way through the dark to the front room where the window was. The smell hit them before anything else. One of them picked up the head from the windowsill. He dropped it immediately. It wasn't light like foam or plastic. It felt like skin. And from the base of it, a dark liquid began spreading across the floor. It was a real human head. They ran. They didn't stop until they were blocks away. What they pieced together later from news that spread through the neighborhood was that it had belonged to a victim. A message left there deliberately. And as they had stood in that room, frozen with their mouths open, both of them had heard slow, deliberate creaking from the ceiling above them, as if someone upstairs was walking toward the staircase. They lived in a rural area, the kind of place where an unexpected knock at 9 in the evening is not just unusual, it is alarming. A man came to the door. He was polite. He said he was launching a small business and wanted to ask whether the family preferred American-made products. He handed her a Clorox container as a free sample. Everything about it seemed rehearsed, too smooth, too cheerful. He told her he had a vacuum cleaner in the van that he wanted to show her. When he went back to retrieve it, she glanced toward the vehicle. There were 5 other men sitting inside. She turned to her daughter and told her to go get her phone. They had no landline. Her daughter couldn't find it. So she grabbed a knife instead, stood just out of sight, and listened. She threw the Clorox container back outside and told the man to leave her property immediately and that she was calling law enforcement. The van pulled out of the driveway fast and did not return. They never learned who those men were or what they intended, but they've never answered an unexpected knock since. He and his friend, he calls him Q, drove 3 hours and then off-roaded deep into the backcountry for a camping and ski trip. No resort, no patrol, just the 2 of them and miles of unmarked hills. They set up camp and spent the afternoon skiing. At some point on a longer run, they separated. He reached the bottom alone, figured Q would catch up, and check the walkie-talkie. Static. That's when he met the other skier. The man was friendly, or seemed to be. Ski mask on, skis strapped to an orange backpack, asking where the best runs were and whether they were camping nearby. He pointed to the hill he had just come down. He mentioned the campsite. The man asked if he could lead him back there, explaining that he and his wife were looking for a safe place to set up near other people. He didn't want to go all the way back, but he felt he should help. So he led the man back to camp, and when they arrived, he turned around and asked where the man's wife was. The man didn't answer. He just started walking closer. Something felt wrong. Then he noticed the skis, the backpack. He recognized them. They belonged to Q. He dove into the tent to reach the emergency flare gun. The man grabbed his leg. He felt an intense, burning pain, sharp and immediate. A knife buried into his leg. He pulled the flare gun free and aimed it directly at the man, who stepped back with his hands raised. He demanded to know where Q was. The man said Q was near the bottom of the hill. He called 911. The man fled before rescue arrived. Q was found unconscious in the snow. He had also been stabbed and robbed. A rescue helicopter, guided by the flare, lifted them both out. They recovered fully. To this day, neither of them has returned to the backcountry alone. He was a college student. His apartment was walking distance from the bar district, which meant late nights and people coming and going at all hours. He was up past 2 in the morning studying. He brought his textbook outside and sat on the front steps with a cigarette. A young woman who lived one apartment over came home from downtown. She was alone. He could tell from her walk that she'd been drinking. She got inside and barely had the door shut before a man materialized out of nowhere and knocked. She opened it. The man introduced himself, casually, at 2:30 in the morning. He watched from the steps. He made himself visible, loud with his textbook, present. The man at the door spent over 10 minutes talking his way into her comfort, reaching up to stroke her hair more than once, inching forward toward the doorway with every exchange. When he made his presence obvious enough, the stranger left, as quietly and suddenly as he had appeared. The police were called. A sketch was produced. When it was made public, the calls came flooding in. The man was a serial predator who had been following women home from bars across the area, offering them rides home and presenting himself as a rideshare driver. This woman lived close enough to the bars that he never got to run that routine on her. The man studying on the porch steps may have been the only reason she got to walk away that night. He had only used the platform once. He found a listing for a ping-pong table, exactly what he and his roommate had been looking for. He set up a meeting for that evening and drove over. The house smelled strange, not dangerous, just stale and closed off. The man who answered was older, with a deep, raspy voice. He said, "Follow me to the basement." The table was there, right in the middle of the room. Then the man said he needed to find the paddles and disappeared back upstairs. He waited 5 minutes, then 10. He started looking around. The walls had framed photos only of the man himself. No family, no friends, just him, and one photo with a dog. He drifted toward a back storage area. A drawer on the utility desk was hanging half open. He pulled it the rest of the way. Inside were Polaroid photographs. He processed what he was looking at slowly, then all at once. A young woman, restrained in a chair, her mouth covered with tape. Multiple photos. Beside them, a row of yellow folders, labeled A through Z. He took out his phone to photograph what he had found. No signal in the basement. He moved to the door at the top of the stairs. It was locked. He heard the man's voice through the door, calm, apologetic, saying the lock must have caught by accident, and he would go find the key. He did not respond. He went to the utility desk, took 3 screwdrivers of different sizes, and tried each one in the keyhole. The smallest fit. He turned it just enough. The door opened. He walked out without a word, drove directly to the nearest police station, and showed them the photographs on his phone. The investigation confirmed the man was an active participant in a criminal network distributing material involving the exploitation of minors. The photos were evidence. Why he locked that door and what he had intended, that question was never fully answered. She was 14 when she took the babysitting job. The boy's name was Cody. He was 6. His parents left her with two instructions: order pizza for dinner and do not go into their bedroom. They also mentioned, almost as an afterthought, that Cody sometimes behaved differently than other kids, that he talked to himself or to an imaginary friend, especially when playing. He called the imaginary friend Agnes. She sat in the living room watching TV while Cody played on the floor with his toys. She noticed him speaking to the empty space across from him, treating it like another child was sitting there. Then a toy on the other side of the room activated on its own. It was not the kind of toy that activated by itself. It had a hand crank. Someone had to pull it down to make it work. She watched it run through its full cycle with no one near it. She asked Cody how that was possible. He looked up at her and said, "Agnes is playing with it." She picked up the toy and turned it off. Later that night, in the final stretch before his parents were due home, she stepped into the bathroom to wash up. There was a knock at the door. She called out for Cody. No answer. She opened the door. The hallway was empty. At the end of the hall, a door was slowly swinging open on its own. Not fast. Deliberately slow. She stepped forward and looked inside the room. Cody was sitting on the far end of the bed, perfectly still, watching her. She asked him who had pushed that door open. He said, "Agnes." She picked him up, carried him to the living room, and did not move from that couch until his parents came home. She never went back. 10 stories. 10 moments where the world revealed something it usually keeps hidden. Some of these people were saved by someone watching. Some saved themselves. And some of them are still not entirely sure what they encountered. If something in the dark ever feels wrong, trust that feeling. It exists for a reason. Stay safe, and we'll see you in the next one.